So looking forward to catching up with Sue Bottrell. She's a specialist, wears a whole bunch of different hats. But importantly for me, she's a legal and safety specialist in the management of contractor safety. Now that's a mouthful, but you have an important task and it's getting harder and harder and harder. Mm-hmm. And I noticed that you're not stopping on your laurels. What are you doing? You're about to set up and do another course to improve your skills.
Yeah, so I have a Masters in Law and I have a Masters in Health and Safety, and I'm about to do a Masters in Arts and Research, hopefully leading into a PhD, looking much more closely at this issue of contractor safety management, which I've been working in for about 15 years. So yeah.
It's some sort of journey for a young school teacher or a young speech pathology specialist who's travelled the world, and you found yourself a niche. It's a very specialist niche, and it's one that's becoming even more important each and every day.
Yeah, so yeah, I did. I started my career as a speech pathologist in the wilds of far north Queensland. And over my time, I've slowly kind of moved, and people think my career is very disjointed, but it is actually step by step. And I ended up doing law. I had worked in safety for quite a number of years. I ended up doing a law degree, which then I thought, I still really like safety, so I'm going to specialise. And then I kind of stumbled across this area of contractor safety management when I was a junior lawyer. Wow. When a client got prosecuted, I felt that the prosecution didn't make a lot of sense. So I basically said, okay, this is an area I'm going to specialise in.
So you made yourself an OH&S specialist as well, along that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. So I tacked my legal skills onto I'm a chartered safety professional with the Australian Institute of Health and Safety. So I've got both sides of the coin, the operational safety side of it and the legal side, and I join those together.
And a qualified lead auditor, you don't muck around.
No, I think if you're going to do it, you do it properly.
Well, look, and that is what we want to touch on, because there are a whole bunch of things that need to be addressed. There's a project, there's a company currently in Queensland that's struggling with some pre-qualifications, and one of the things we want to address is the questionable method of preventing incidents. Yeah, you're in safety, and this company is called Nexus Infrastructure, and it's been banned from doing Commonwealth construction work due to an unacceptable number of incidents that have occurred on the Toowoomba Second Range Crossing construction project. Now, what is the challenge? The company, I would imagine, would have been subject to a number of pre-qualification processes in the past. And how's it got to this stage and it still has problems?
Look,
is the process not good enough?
Well,
not extensive enough?
What it does is it shines a light on the traditional approach to engaging contractors and managing contractor safety, which is a debate and a discussion that I've been having with industry for, as I said, over a decade. And my position is that our historical approach to how we manage contractor safety is flawed. We spend an inordinate amount of time scrutinising contractors in the first phases of engaging them under a contract. So that company would have gone through the Office of the Federal Safety Commissioner.
Yep.
They would have gone through a pre-qualification process. They would have produced masses of documentation, spent a lot of money, basically presenting themselves as they thought as the government wants to see them.
The specialist entity.
That's right.
To do the job.
That's right. The government says, do you have this? They go, yes, we do, and here it is. There's a heavy reliance on paperwork to demonstrate a degree of safety performance. And you kind of say to yourself, well, how can you demonstrate safety performance through paperwork? Safety is an on-the-ground thing. It's an operational thing. Anyone can fill in paperwork.
Okay, pause for a moment. Wouldn't you think, you and I would talk about our past records and what we've done in the past. Wouldn't you think that if a construction company came to you, you'd go and have a look at their building record, their construction successes, and understand, did they achieve them in the required time? What was their record then? How would the safety stand up? Wouldn't they be some of the things you look back on? Or is that not the case?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So what we have an obligation to do is to ensure that we're engaging companies that have a good reputation,
yeah,
that they've been referred to us.
Have runs on the board?
Have runs on the board, haven't had engagement with the regulator in the past, haven't been prosecuted, that kind of thing. We need to make sure we ask the right questions. So we say to them, you know, are you competent to do the work we're engaging you to do? All those kinds of questions. Have you got the right processes in place? Have you identified risk and are you controlling it? And make that process short, sharp and to the point. Get your legal clauses right, put them on notice about what they need to have in place, and then move on to the critical elements of contractor safety management, which is bringing them on board. And we were discussing earlier, contractors have a much higher degree of incidence than regular employees. We tend to assume that's because contractors aren't very good at what they do and they have a lot of accidents.
Not necessarily the case, though.
No, and there's been research, and this is partly driving my desire to do some research, saying the main reason why contractors have incidents is because the sites that they go to don't include them in their safety arrangements. So they're getting run over by their clients. They're falling off buildings because their clients aren't putting in work at heights solutions. So we focus very much on the contractor and what they're doing. And the contractor feels compelled to present a picture of themselves that matches our expectations.
In the best possible light.
Yeah.
But okay, so one of the things we must shield ourselves against is too much red tape. We need red tape, but it's got to be the right sort of red tape.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Yep.
And
precisely.
you as the safety specialist in this, what are the sorts of things you'd love to see in the next job, next big job? What would you be saying, whether it be government or if it's a major business that wants something built, maybe, for example, in your headquarters? What are the sorts of things that must be in that decision-making process?
So I'd like to see a whole lot less time spent on paperwork and
not
reviewing
only reading
safety
the
management
paperwork,
systems
but making
and
the
preparing
paperwork.
it. That's right.
Okay.
I'd like to see a whole lot more focus on the actual operational engagement piece, inducting contractors, bringing them into the on-site safety arrangements, all of those things. And then the next piece is changing the way we monitor contractors. So instead of going out and saying, right, I'm looking at you and looking for faults, it's let's work together and change the culture. Contractors are a critical part of infrastructure projects, and we need to treat them as partners. And there are companies now that talk about delivery partners instead of contractors.
Yes.
And it's a step in the right direction. Often it's in title only, and they still treat them like, oh, I'm going to
Remember I mentioned to you previously in a discussion we were talking about some of the projects that I've seen overseas, and one was the builders of the metro in Greece, in Athens, Greece. And what I noticed were they were building partners from three different countries, and they came together. And one of the things that I was most impressed by was how they all spoke well of each other at the end of the project. Because they had lent on one another. That was the thing I learnt throughout the entire project. So you're saying to me, we need to change the way they think.
It's an excellent phrase. They lent on each other. Because critically, the reason you use contractors is because they know what they're doing.
Right.
And you don't.
Okay.
You bring them in as experts. You need to use their knowledge. You need to respect their knowledge. You need to treat them as an equal. And I'll probably use that going forward. You need to lean on your contractors because that's why they're there. Instead of treating them as I'm going to be watching you and penalising you and assessing everything you're doing when I don't really have the competence to do it. No, what I'm doing is I'm bringing you in as an expert to deliver services to the best of your ability, which I know you can do.
So it's a collaborative. That's what you're striving to try and get the industry to understand. Collaborative work is just as we see ensemble casts deliver wonderful results on screen. For example, we saw one of the biggest television series ever called Game of Thrones. It took an extraordinary cast and different directors, different producers throughout the entire 10 years, but that cast worked flawlessly, but all lent on one another. So this great collaborative effort. So we see it everywhere around us. You're thinking it's time now to be starting to encourage that sort of thinking in the building space?
Absolutely. And, there's legal...
Why hasn't it been done in the past, if that's the case?
Well, I think my theory, and
Yeah.
again, this might be part of my question under my PhD, my theory is that people who engage contractors have a real fear that if the contractor has an incident, because of the contractor's work, that somehow they're going to end up with legal liability. They're not. Well, they might have an engagement with the regulator, but from a legal standpoint, you are entitled to rely upon your expert contractor. That's the reason why you engage them.
It's more often not the fallback position, isn't it? I went to my specialist.
Yeah, exactly. It is a defence to say, I didn't know how to control this risk or to do this job, so I brought in the experts. And the High Court has repeated that over and over again, as have the Supreme Courts across various states.
Pity our state government of Victoria didn't think that way.
Well...
Got caught out? Got caught out?
Oh, this is in relation to the quarantine.
Yeah.
Look, the problem there is that what you have to do is make sure that you're making the right determination about the skills and abilities of your contractor. Can you do the job I'm asking you to do? And I think that fundamental question was missing in relation to one of the security companies.
Yeah.
When it happened, I just Googled both security companies and it became fairly clear to me that one of them didn't have the
runs on the board
background in the areas that they needed to. Good at security, had done security before,
Yeah.
but this wasn't security.
No, this was much more than that.
This is something entirely different. So the calls for the government to go and walk the corridors and know what they're doing, that's not what's needed. What's needed is the question in the beginning to go, can you do what we're asking you to do? And as you said before, where's your references to show me you've done it before?
You've been in this business now for the better part of 25 years. In that time, in that last quarter of a century, I cannot believe that the industry, which has given Melbourne, for example, let's talk about the development. The last 15 years in Melbourne, the infrastructure and the number of buildings that have gone up has been extraordinary. I would have thought this thinking that we're talking about now, this real collaborative effort that we need to get things done, but it seems to me that we've allowed the adversarial stance to be the one that shows itself and raises its ugly mire each and every time, rather than the collaborative one. Is that fair? Is that a fair comment?
I think we've gotten worse and worse and worse in terms of bureaucracy and paperwork and jumping through hoops and the sorts of pressure we put on contractors and businesses to win work. We are driving them to spend a lot of money on consultants like me to prepare something that they can put up as window dressing and go, see, I should get the gig.
Wow.
And there's a ton of consultants that do it.
Let's quickly wrap this up. If you could wave that wand, what would you like to see done tomorrow? I know it's not going to happen tomorrow, but what would you like to see us start to think to businesses now and contractors and everyone, all the players involved? What are the key drivers? 3 or 4 reasons to think positively about the future, if we could do it.
Okay. First of all, I'd like us to better understand the parties' obligations. So the regulators, I really like the regulators to review and redraft and reissue a lot of their guidance material, because unfortunately it presents an imprecise picture and that leads people into this paperwork hell.
Yep.
The next thing is I'd like people to be able to say, yes, I am using my contractors as experts and I am going to engage them on an equal playing field. And I suppose thirdly is I'd really like people who are giving advice in the industry, lawyers and safety professionals, to up their game in terms of their expertise.
Sue Bottrell, just listening to you tells me that the reason why you've kept yourself growing is because you're never satisfied.
No,
but,
probably not.
But the other thing is that we should also be asking of our business leaders more Yeah, and as you said, I love that line. Let's make sure that the red tape is not that onerous that it kills them or stops them from working, but get them to think smarter. And when we're tendering for a job, make sure you look at the previous record and see the runs on the board. It's all right when we're picking an Australian Test team, we say, have you scored any runs? Haven't scored any runs? We can't pick you.
Yeah.
More of that, please.
Definitely.
Sue Bottrell, thank you for joining us on The Informer and giving us an insight into some of the challenges that face the building game and the safety game as well.
Thanks for your time.
Pleasure. Sue Bottrell and The Informer said.